This is a story about a cute and naive young boy who plays with his mother every day, but deep down, he is the greatest demon king sealed for 60,000 years. Jamie was once the most powerful dark magician in the mythological era but was betrayed by the 12 heavenly gods. Evil forces sealed him away for 66,666 years, but he emerged from the temporal rift, reincarnating as the eldest son of the Count's family. His father is one of the Empire's 5 great sword saints, and his mother is the only daughter of the prestigious Bell family. Unfortunately, his parents are both obsessed with different things, one with his wife and the other with children. Although Jamie's body is that of a child, his mind is that of an ancient monster who has lived for 60,000 years. He has to pretend to be a good child every day. Though these days make him mentally uneasy, he endures it all to accumulate strength secretly. In reality, if not for the mission he carries, Jamie enjoys this family life. When his father learns of Jamie's interest in magic, he arranges for the Empire's top-ranked 8th-tier archmage to be his tutor. However, before the introduction by his father, Jamie encounters the mage in the corridor. Seeing the white-bearded old mage, Jamie immediately senses the immense magic power within him. Similarly, the old mage recognizes Jamie as an exceptional magical talent. Misunderstanding the old mage's silence as an intrusion, Jamie, who almost caused a god to fall, is displeased that someone dares to test him. Unhappy, he releases a purple magic attack towards the old mage, but it proves ineffective against the 8th-tier mage. Instead of being discouraged, the old mage is excited by the fact that a child can unleash such magic. Attempting another magic attack, the old mage targets Jamie, but Jamie sees through the trick. The magic is not aimed at him. Jamie's composed reaction astonishes the old mage once again. The next moment, a sword light suddenly descended, shattering the old mage's magic. The one who intervened was Jamie's father, Earl Argino Weldon. "Your joke has gone too far," Argino scolded. Upon seeing his father's arrival, Jamie immediately put on a look of grievance. Witnessing this scene, the old mage burst into laughter. "Indeed, a little rascal," he chuckled. Subsequently, the two men moved to the living room. Earl Argino Weldon complained that Marquis Linmel's intervention was too heavy-handed, considering he was supposed to be the child's teacher, not risking his life. Marquis Linmel, with a sly smile, stated that the father didn't understand his son at all. Moreover, he couldn't be the boy's teacher because his son had just seen through all of his magic. This statement left the father in shock. When Marquis Linmel noticed the father's silence, he continued to explain, "Your son has reached the level of a 3rd-tier mage through self-study. If not for the limitations of his current body, he would be at least 4th tier by now. He's a genius. He doesn't need a teacher. He just needs support, both mentally and materially. With that, he might grow into the legendary 9th-tier archmage." The demon king who fears not even the 12 main gods, Jamie, finds himself in an unexpected situation after his reincarnation, being the subject of affection from a mother obsessed with children. After enduring his mother's pampering for 2.5 hours, Jamie returned to his room. Just as he was about to undress and enjoy a peaceful sleep, he discovered the old mage, Linmel, sitting on his bed. Startled, Jamie collapsed on the floor. "You old rascal, don't tell me you have some weird fetish," Jamie exclaimed. Jamie's reaction amused Linmel, who burst into laughter. "Weren't you quite arrogant just now? Why the sudden fear?" "Come on, I have a gift for you," Linmel said. Jamie cautiously accepted the magic book Linmel offered, wondering if the old mage had some ulterior motive. Linmel explained that the book contained his unique breathing technique, a gift for Jamie. He expressed high expectations for his potential. With a blink, Linmel vanished from the room, leaving Jamie in bewilderment. The magical breathing technique involved absorbing mana through the mouth for lung respiration, accumulating it in the heart. Though effective, it had limitations on breath quantity. Approaching the magic book with skepticism, Jamie almost exploded on the spot after a single glance. The content suggested fragmenting mana into small pieces and absorbing it through the skin, a highly efficient but demanding technique. As the strongest dark magician of the mythological era, Jamie was undeterred by the challenge. However, after careful reading, he discovered a drawback: the specificity required in mana fragmentation and the necessity of cutting it into fixed shapes at a designated location, a feat beyond Jamie's current capabilities. However, the previous life's soulbound demon, Blake, could solve this problem. And so, Jamie began practicing according to the improved breathing technique. Early the next morning, when his father saw Jamie practicing alone in the room, he stood there dumbfounded. Mana continuously swirled around the room. "What did Linmel give to my son?" Although we are a family of swordsmen, and I ended up with a magician's son, just as good as his mother." His father smiled. After 2.5 days of attempts, Jamie finally broke through to the peak of the 4th tier using the newly learned breathing technique. Excited to share the good news with his father, he prepared to reveal his newfound skill. However, at that moment, Jamie's father was meeting a peculiar visitor with cat-like eyes. The visitor claimed to be a follower of the Zenithian faith and had come to spread the teachings in their territory. Though the father didn't directly refuse, he hinted that the visitor couldn't establish a foothold on their land and manipulate their people's minds. Seeing the situation, the cat-eyed visitor decided not to persist and promptly said he had other stuff to attend later. Shortly after the visitor's departure, Jamie emerged from behind the wall. He had overheard the entire conversation and recognized the Zenithian faith as one of the 12 main gods who had conspired against him in his previous life. Now, their followers had infiltrated his territory. It seemed he would need to investigate thoroughly at night and clean up these nefarious individuals. As night fell, Jamie transformed Blake into his wings and set out to investigate the Zenithian matter. In a narrow alley, 2 traffickers were discussing their escape plan. They were members of a criminal organization specializing in human trafficking, and their operation this time was within the territory of Count Weldon, Jamie's father. Aware that capture would mean severe consequences, the 2 traffickers were in a dilemma. Just as they were stressed about the situation, Jamie emerged from around the corner. Realizing their exposure, the 2 panicked and, without hesitation, attempted to silence Jamie permanently. However, with a mere lift of his finger, Jamie took control of their minds. Expecting some useful information about Zenithian from the criminal organization, Jamie was disappointed. Apart from human trafficking details, they knew nothing valuable. Unwilling to waste time, Jamie decided to manipulate their minds, making them surrender to his father. Before he could leave the alley, a magical force struck the 2 traffickers, sending them flying back. To Jamie's surprise, an elderly figure with white hair was behind the attack. Irritated by the interference, Jamie confronted Old Mage. "I had plans for these guys, and you dare to interfere," Jamie exclaimed, releasing dark magic to sustain the traffickers' lives. However, the elderly mage ordered his subordinates to drag the 2 back, intending to execute them once again. This enraged Jamie even further. But in the next moment, the old white-haired mage pierced Jamie's body with flame magic. Watching the charred corpse on the ground, the old mage appeared excited. However, his subordinate standing nearby dumbfoundedly said, "Boss, why did you kill Jack?" Old White-Haired was bewildered, thinking his subordinate was talking nonsense. However, the next moment, Jamie emerged from beside him. "You just killed one of your own people. Is it amusing?" Jamie questioned with a smirk. Old White-Haired looked terrified, thinking he had encountered a ghost. He immediately released his most potent magic at Jamie. Yet, what threat could a mere 3rd-tier mage pose to Jamie? From the beginning, Jamie had used illusion to control everyone. For him, wiping out this group was a trivial matter. After dealing with Old White-Haired, Jamie didn't forget to make use of the waste, and he absorbed all the magic within Old White-Haired's body. At this point, only the 2 traffickers from the start remained in the alley, along with the residual energy. Although Jamie had injected some magic into them earlier, they would eventually perish. After some contemplation, Jamie chose to cast necromancy on the 2. Necromancy, a dark magic from the mythological era, involved raising corpses to control them. While it could revive the dead, it was not the same. The bodies animated through necromancy were not living beings but undead. With Blake's assistance, Jamie successfully turned the 2 into undead minions, and he named them Azard and Ryza. The only drawback was that both emitted a black ink-like aura, perhaps due to Jamie's insufficient strength causing the spell to fail. However, these undead minions were impractical in their current state. Not only would they be easily detected if they infiltrated the Zenithian temple, but even entering a cafeteria would raise suspicions. Just as Jamie was about to dismiss the 2, Blake suddenly flew onto Azard's head. Immediately, Blake opened his wings and absorbed all the dark energy surrounding them into his body. The magical energy expanded Blake's body by 2.5 times. Jamie then awakened the 2 and explained the situation. Observing the black magic emanating from Jamie, Azard was instantly frightened, perceiving Jamie as a demon king-like figure. However, the rebellious Ryza was still contemplating resistance. In an act of defiance, he questioned Jamie, saying they didn't recognize him as a person and wondered why he had the right to control them. Surprised by Ryza's resistance, Jamie thought, "Oh, retaining consciousness to resist me?" Seems like I have some shortcomings as a master. Nevertheless, Jamie warned Ryza not to speak to him that way again, threatening to end his existence if he dared to be defiant. The defiant lad who received a kick lost his temper and now understood that, from this day forward, their lives were under the control of the young man before them. Soon, Azard and Ryza made progress. They captured a mid-level member of the Lival organization, intending to extract the location of the Lival boss from him. After all, Lival is the largest criminal organization in Hace, and its leader would likely have information about the Zenithian cult. Initially, Jamie only wanted to be a hands-off manager, caring only about the final outcome. However, his mother informed him that the day of the grand ball hosted by Count Simon and Jamie's father was approaching, and the entire family had to attend, which meant Jamie wouldn't have much free time then. On that night, Jamie immediately summoned Azard and Ryza. Ryza reported that the Zenithian cult was recently established. Though they hadn't found any relevant information yet, they had captured a Lival organization executive who knew about the assassination attempt by the old white-haired mage. Ryza was confident that this captive was an informed individual. Unfortunately, despite continuous interrogation for 2.5 days, they couldn't extract any useful information. Hearing this, Jamie walked over and said, "Leave the rest to me." A terrifying black aura filled the entire room. Jamie approached the man who had been tortured and gently placed his hand on the man's head, saying, "Don't be afraid, child. You just need to help me with a little errand. Go to the Count's mansion immediately and report the activities of your organization. Do you understand?" The man, receiving Jamie's command, walked out like a lifeless puppet. After these actions, Jamie instructed Azard and Ryza to leave the town for a while, saying he needed to leave for a few days. He wanted them to behave themselves. Just as Jamie had left the warehouse, Ryza hurriedly caught up, expressing his excitement and confusion about their newfound strength. He wondered if they had become advanced undead. These questions left Jamie somewhat bewildered. He hadn't encountered such a situation before. Typically, the undead lose their sanity and become monsters. However, Azard and Ryza were exceptions. They not only retained their human consciousness but also had enhanced bodies. Jamie chuckled, explaining that they were essentially stronger zombies than the usual ones. However, if they perform well, they might even become advanced zombies. Hearing Jamie's words, Azard and Ryza were very happy and enthusiastic to work harder. Meanwhile, chaos erupted at the Count's mansion due to the man's report. Jamie's father learned about the crimes of the Lival organization and executed the man on the spot. He had to complete matters before attending the ball, so only Jamie, his sister, and his mother went to Count Simon's ball the next day. Count Simon, similar in age to Jamie's father, was a 7th-level mage, known as the Red Lotus Mage. He was considered the most powerful lord in the Eastern noble forces, along with Jamie's father. Count Simon was rumored to be able to take away thousands of lives in an instant. Upon hearing his mother's words, Jamie entered into contemplation. While he wasn't particularly interested in being a Red Lotus Mage or a 7th-level mage, the prospect of an attack that could take away thousands of lives intrigued him. Although it was possible, it wasn't easy. Jamie was curious about this magic, so it seemed like he would have to have a good chat with Count Simon during this trip. When Count Simon made his appearance at the ball, Jamie was stunned. The aura he exuded was almost on par with Count Lemel, and in some aspects, even surpassed him. The reputation of the Red Lotus Mage seemed well-deserved. Despite being such a formidable mage, Count Simon had 2 somewhat stupid sons with mediocre abilities. They were overly eager to please their father and gain more attention. At the banquet, Simon's elder son, Ulf, talked about Jamie, expressing that since Jamie would be Wilton's heir in the future, he wanted to get to know Jamie better. His father was irritated by Ulf's recent behavior of treating other noble children as subordinates, but he didn't want to discourage his enthusiasm. He encouraged Ulf to get closer to Jamie. Little did he know that Ulf's agreement on the surface concealed sinister thoughts about how to make Jamie kneel at his feet. Unbeknownst to Ulf, his younger brother, Lenon, noticed all his evil intentions. After lunch, Jamie, wanting to escape the noisy environment, went to the backyard alone. Suddenly, he heard a voice behind him, triggering his defensive instincts. Jamie quickly conjured magical light and aimed it at the source, only to discover that it was just a little girl. Relieved, Jamie withdrew his magic. However, the girl was frightened by his earlier actions. Angrily, she questioned why Jamie attacked her without any reason, emphasizing that such treatment was highly impolite, especially towards a lady. Jamie asked her name and how she appeared behind him. The girl, displaying a touch of arrogance, refused to reveal anything. Unwilling to tolerate her attitude, Jamie launched an air blast at her feet, making it clear that he meant business. He insisted that she speak up unless she wanted trouble. Faced with Jamie's threat, the girl panicked and hastily disclosed her identity. Her name was Ash Bale, the second daughter of Viscount Bale, and she was also a spirit magician. Hearing this, Jamie was momentarily stunned. A spiritualist forms a bond with a spirit born in nature. They were treated like outstanding talents, and just their existence was enough to be given the title of Baron. Typically, spiritualists start cultivating their affinity after the age of 10. Surprisingly, Ash Bale, around Jamie's age, had already formed a contract with a wind spirit. It seemed she was a rare talent. If she formally trained, she might even form a contract with the Spirit King. Once he understood her identity, Jamie began introducing himself. He mentioned that her father, Viscount Bale, served under his father. This revelation left Ash Bale momentarily dumbfounded, as she didn't expect Jamie to be here to flaunt his family connections. Subsequently, Jamie decided to explore the surroundings alone, but Ash Bale persistently followed him. This annoyed Jamie, and he questioned her about her intentions. Anxiously, Ash Bale expressed her desire to be friends. Jamie, feeling indifferent, questioned the necessity of making friends and decided to distance himself. However, he quickly dismissed the matter, understanding that Ash Bale was just a child with such thoughts, which was normal. But these have nothing to do with myself. Emotions, once they arise, make people vulnerable. If my past self had not failed to restrain these emotions, I wouldn't have ended up in such a disastrous state. Leaving the chattering Ash Bale behind, Jamie intended to return to the banquet hall. However, a discordant voice echoed in. It turned out that Ulf, accompanied by 2 lackeys, had come to provoke. The 2 lackeys initiated the taunting, speaking disdainfully about Jamie. Faced with such characters, Jamie merely extended a finger, silencing the 2 instantly, and gestured for them to leave. Ulf was furious on the spot. "Don't you know who my father is? Follow my lead and behave." He then took out a magic sphere from his pocket, and as he crushed it, illusionary magic formed a spatial net, enveloping everyone. Ulf laughed. "Now no adults can see us. Make sure you don't grab onto my pants begging for mercy later." Glancing at the 3 in front of him, Jamie revealed a playful smile. "This is getting interesting. Saves me some trouble." Ulf, uncertain about Jamie's intentions, was met with a sudden black magic that descended upon them. Under this magic, wherever there were orifices, blood started to flow. Jamie smiled and said, "Don't close the spatial net. Otherwise, everyone will witness your painful struggles." And so, Jamie gave the trio a lesson they wouldn't forget. However, Ulf was utterly unwilling to accept defeat. Upon returning to the banquet hall, he was already preparing to seek assistance. Just at that moment, his younger brother Lenon called out to him, expressing concern for his mistreated older brother. Lenon couldn't stand idly by while his brother was mistreated, so he handed something fiery red to his brother. Ulf was surprised by the item, wondering where Lenon had obtained such a dangerous thing. However, he quickly dismissed the thought, realizing that the source was not as important as dealing with the current situation. Meanwhile, Wilton, who had resolved the Lival organization issue, arrived at Simon's estate overnight. Simon personally welcomed him, and after some pleasantries, they entered the reception hall. Simon took the opportunity to mention Jamie, offering high praise for his abilities. Simon expressed his envy of Jamie's innate abilities but also shared his curiosity about witnessing the extraordinary powers of a mage reaching the legendary 9th tier. He sighed that humans, compared to dragons and higher elves, were relatively weak. However, the birth of a 9th tier mage could potentially elevate humanity's status, even gaining the respect of magical creatures like dragons. At the Count Simon's banquet, Jamie wondered when this ball would end. Ash found him once again, this time bringing her sister along, causing Jamie's face to darken. He stood up on the spot, ready to leave. However, at that moment, Ash's sister, Rebecca Bale, walked over. When Jamie saw her, he was dumbfounded. Ash thought he was stunned by her sister's beauty, but little did she know that Rebecca was the woman Jamie had loved for all his life, the one who sacrificed herself for Jamie, falling into the hands of the gods. Jamie, no. Diablo Volfer castrated the emotion called love and became a monster. The reason for that was now in front of him, a child. As Jamie pondered this, Ulf's suicide team showed up again. With Ulf activating the red item brought by his brother, a surge of scorching flames rushed toward Jamie. Enraged by the interference, Jamie exclaimed, "Don't bother me, damn it." The flames disappeared instantly, leaving Ulf bewildered. It was a 6th-level Phoenix burst, crafted by his father. How could Jamie block it? Before Ulf could comprehend, Jamie had already harbored murderous intent, and an ice-type magic enveloped Ulf. As a 2nd-level mage, he had no chance to resist, and death for him became just a matter of time.